Kristen is designing a roller coaster. We obviously want that roller coaster to be continuous. We don't want there to be any drop-offs. And then she wants one peak in the middle section. So there has to be one peak in this section here. So we are going to have to know a little bit about trig graphs in order to create a peak in that middle section. And by peak, she means like she wants it to go like that or like something like that. We don't want it to just be only decreasing or only increasing. We want something else to be happening. Okay, so let's start with making the first two functions meet up. So -2 cosine of, and you're going to plug in x is equal to 0 because that's our first boundary, and set that equal to a times cosine of b times 0 minus 2. And cosine of 0 is 1, so -2 plus 3 is equal to a times 1, so a minus 2. So that's 1 equals a minus 2. Add 2. A is equal to 3. Okay, now for our second and third, we're going to make those have the same y coordinates as well. So I already know a is 3, so 3 cosine of b times x, and x in this case is 2 pi minus 2 is equal to negative cosine of 2 times 2 pi minus 4. So 3 cosine of 2 pi b minus 2 is equal to, okay, cosine of 4 pi is the same thing as a cosine of 2 pi, which is the same thing as a cosine of 0. So that's 1 minus 4. Let's add 2 to both sides. So I get 3 cosine of 2 pi times b is equal to -5 plus 2 is -3. Divide by 3. And I get the cosine of something is -1. The cosine of something is -1. So let's think about the unit circle. Where do you have a cosine value of -1? And that's here at pi. But that's not actually the only location where that happens. That could be pi. It could be -pi. It could be go once and a half around. That's 3 pi. So 2 pi times b could be pi or -pi or 3 pi or -3 pi, etc. Right? It's pi plus 2 pi k. So we have to figure out which one of these is going to make the most sense with the information we're given, which is that there is one peak in the middle. So let's go ahead and just start with a simple one. Let's say 2 pi times b is equal to pi. So if 2 pi times b is equal to pi, divide both sides by 2 pi, I get b equals 1/2. And let's see if that works. So that would be, the middle section would be 3 cosine of 1/2 x minus 2. Okay, so we need to just draw a sketch of this and make sure that from 0 to 2 pi, let's make sure we have one peak. So this is a midline of -2. Cosine always starts at a maximum, and then it's going to cross our midline, have a minimum, cross our midline, and have a maximum again. The question is, what is the period of this? So the period of this function is 2 pi divided by 1/2, which is 4 pi. So this graph by 4 pi, so it's going to start at a maximum because it's cosine, then it's going to cross your midline and have a minimum. Okay, well, that's what it's going to do from 0 to 2 pi, right? That's the interval that we're on. So does that middle section have a peak? No, it does not. Okay, well, let's try 3 pi. Let's see what happens. So if I try, let's try 3 pi because that didn't work. So 2 pi times b is equal to 3 pi. And again, that's because the cosine of something needs to be -1. The cosine of 3 pi is -1. Okay, the cosine of 3 pi is also -1. So then I get b is equal to 3/2. Okay, so let's try that. So my equation would now be 3 cosine of 3/2 x minus 2. So this graph would still have a midline of -2. It would still be up 3 and down 3. But what would the period be? Would there be a peak from 0 to 2 pi? So the period would be 2 pi divided by 3/2, which is 2 pi times 2/3, which is 4 pi over 3. So this is going to finish 4 pi over 3. It's going to finish one full rotation. Now 4 pi over 3, you want to think, is that less than 2 pi or is that more than 2 pi? 4/3 is less than 2. 4/3 is 1 and a third. So remember, we're talking about the interval from 0 to 2 pi. 4/3 is 1 and 2/3. So 2 is like 2 pi is going to be like somewhere like that. But this is going to finish one full cycle by 4/3. It's going to look like this. So does it have some sort of peak between 0 and 2 pi? Yes, it has a maximum right here between 0 and 2 pi. So the actual answer, even though you're going to solve it and you're going to think, okay, inverse cosine, that's going to be pi. You solve it, you get b equals 1/2. But the actual answer is b equals 3/2 with a equals 3 because of that requirement that there is a peak somewhere. So in order for that to occur, your period needs to change. It can't be 4 pi because there's no peak that would occur by the time you reached 2 pi. So in order for you to have a peak by the time you reach 2 pi, there needs to be some sort of horizontal compression so that b value of 3/2 will make this work.